Do you want to make your own podcast? I would highly suggest Anchor. Anchor is a free website and app that lets you record your podcast from anywhere at any time. You can record in your car, you can record on a train, you can even just record in your home. And with Anchor, you can also cut out parts of your podcast because you can also edit your episodes inside of the Anchor app or website. And also you can add music that is non-copyrighted, so you can just add sounds or music to your episodes that you don't have to worry about the episodes being copyright striked or anything like that. And then Anchor can also distribute your podcast for free. That's right, for free. You can distribute it to Spotify, which most people are listening to right now, and you can basically distribute to any podcast app or website that you can imagine, basically. So if you do want to get started, you can use the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm. Again, you can go to the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm and tell them High Scores Podcast sent you. Now back to the episode. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode. So for this episode we're going over my Week 12 predictions. Last week I wasn't able to do my Week 11 predictions video. But my record as of right now through 11 weeks of football, I am 102-62, and then you guys, the viewers, have a record of 88 and 76. So if you do want to vote on these predictions, you can go over to my Instagram and vote on the polls that I post there on high_scores podcast, and you can vote on these games and these polls and to participate in the predictions. But with that out the way, let's start with the Week 12 predictions. Okay, now heading into the first game tomorrow on Thanksgiving, we got the Bears at the Lions. Now, the Bears coming off of a close loss to the Ravens. The Bears had it really early on. I thought they would be able to pull through with a win, but Tyler Huntley led the Ravens offense really well. And he's, I say he's a pretty good quarterback, at least for a stand-in for Lamar Jackson. Obviously, he does need to work on some things, but as a stand-in for Lamar Jackson, it's really good. The playbook still fits well with him, which was, I know, a main criticism from the Ravens, that they didn't keep Trace McSorley and they went with Tyler Huntley. But that's mainly because if you have a quarterback that's like or if you have a second-string quarterback that's like your starting quarterback, you're gonna have an easier blend in with the offense than changing the playbook for the second-string quarterback. So really great move by the Ravens, and they were able to win. The defense, obviously injured, so they weren't really doing that good against the Bears offense. Obviously the injury to Justin Fields for the Bears, which put Andy Dalton in, who hasn't been the best lately. That definitely did not help the Bears at all. And then obviously having Eddie Jackson out before the game, that definitely hurt them, because now they're relying on a secondary that doesn't have a leader in Eddie Jackson. So really bad teams on both sides of the ball, as in just having injured players. I know Lamar Jackson he wasn't injured, but he was sick with like infected lung, or I can't really remember what it was, but something bad. So hopefully he gets that fixed. But both teams had really major injuries, but it just seemed like the Ravens were able to fight through that last minute of the game and was able to score a touchdown at the end. And then moving on to the Lions game, coming off of a close loss to the Browns. And DeAndre Swift coming off his second 100 rushing yard game in a row, which is really good to see as a Lions fan. And then the Browns did really good running the ball. Nick Chubb was just powering through the offensive line, or the Lions defensive line. The offensive line really held up for the Browns there. The passing game obviously wasn't that good for the Browns because Baker Mayfield was having some injuries there. But as for the Lions, they were able to stretch the field pretty well. That Jared Goff was out. I mean, Tim Boyle did make some really bad decisions, I'd say, with taking care of the ball. And the Lions defense did pretty well. I just think the Lions offense really couldn't capitalize on the turnovers that were, being held at the game, during the game. Just the Browns were, I believe Baker Mayfield threw 2 interceptions. So, the Lions just really couldn't capitalize on that. And then the Lions also had 2 interceptions, or at least 2 turnovers. And that led, no, I had 2 interceptions. And that led to, the Browns kind of capitalizing on it and scoring some points off of those turnovers, which the Lions could not do. So, that's why I think the Lions lost this game. Now coming into this game, I do have the Lions winning this one. I do think it's going to be really close, but obviously it looks like Justin Fields is going to be out for this game, and Jared Goff is questionable, and I kind of hope that they sit him, because I kind of like Tim Boyle in this position a lot more than Jared Goff. It just seemed like he was really in a rhythm, even though he did have 2 turnovers. It was against a tough defensive line, and he was getting pressured a lot of the time. And also there's some bad weather in Cleveland, but still he made some mistakes, but I do think he's a lot better in this system than Jared Goff. So I do hope that they still sit Jared Goff, because he is still working through that oblique injury. So I hope they just sit him, because they're not going to be able to throw deep, especially if Eddie Jackson's going to be out for this game as well. If you can probably just attack that and go deep. So I don't think they should start Jared Goff. I have heard that Dan Campbell is leaning towards starting Goff, but I just don't think it's a smart decision for this game. And then looking at it from the Bears' perspective, obviously, now with the news that this is Matt Nagy's last game coaching for the Bears, and a lot of Bears fans are happy about that. So maybe the Lions still come out with a win. Maybe just because he just knows that this is the last game he's going to coach, and he doesn't really need to coach the team. So maybe this is the point where the Lions get their first win, hopefully. Now, the Bears, I think just getting more time with Andy Dalton back should be good, because they did have him out for about 4 weeks, so they just were getting used to that offense with Andy Dalton against the Ravens. And yeah, it just wasn't looking that good for the Bears offense. But now that I think they have more experience with Andy Dalton for this upcoming game, maybe they do a little bit better on the offensive side of the ball. And then as for the defense, I think they're kind of hoping that Eddie Jackson's ready to go, which I think he will be, but I think they're hoping for him to get going there. And then the defense, they've been pretty consistent. So I think this is really close. This is going to be anybody's game here, but I do have the Lions winning this one. Now moving on to the next Thanksgiving game, we have the Raiders at the Cowboys. Now the Raiders coming off of a really bad loss against the Bengals, and they just could not stop Joe Mixon for the life of them. So it was a really bad game by the Raiders. They just couldn't stop the Bengals run game, and they were throwing some deep balls there. And then on the Raiders' offensive side of the ball, they just couldn't get anything going, and the Bengals were able to capitalize on that, and they blew them out. And then going to the Cowboys game, the Cowboys did lose to the Chiefs, losing 19-9. And I thought this would be, it was pretty evenly matched until kind of towards the end of the game, where Kansas City was scoring, some points there. So definitely tough loss for the Cowboys, who I thought they were going to do a lot better recently. Now that it seemed like they were back in the groove, but it's looking like the Chiefs found out where they needed to be, because a lot of people were even questioning if they could even win the AFC, even at the AFC West. But it looks like they're coming back. They're making a resurgence here, and I do think the Chiefs have found a groove to go to. But the Cowboys, just tough loss there. I think just the stamina of the team was, definitely challenged, and the Chiefs, had time of possession, and Patrick Mahomes had a really good game. Or I guess not really a really good game. Both quarterbacks didn't have a good game. I think I had Dak Prescott starting in one of my leagues, and then I had Patrick Mahomes starting in one of my leagues. And both of them put up single digits in my fantasy teams. I believe Dak Prescott had 7 points, and Patrick Mahomes had 9 points. So both performances from quarterbacks weren't that good. The Chiefs' running attack was pretty good, but as for the Cowboys, they just couldn't get any touchdowns. Dak Prescott threw 2 interceptions. Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott couldn't really do much. The receiving game didn't do much. It was kind of hard for the Cowboys offense. And then looking at their defense, Micah Parsons did get 2 sacks, and Armstrong got 1 sack, so they were able to get through the offensive line, but really just a tough game for the Cowboys. But moving on to this game, I do have Dallas winning this one. I think it's going to be close, but I think the Raiders just haven't been able to get back to where they were earlier on in the season, and it just looks like they're kind of off. They lost their head coach. They lost a first-round wide receiver midway through the season, and just looks like they're not on the same page. They added Deshaun Jackson, but he hasn't really been doing much for the team. And Hunter Renfro's just been being clamped up by defenses, so you can't really target him if he's not open. So he just hasn't really been getting open. Josh Jacobs hasn't been doing much this season, or at least anything really big. He's been doing decent, but just not the same Josh Jacobs as last year. And then that defense just couldn't really get anything going against the Bengals, and I think it's going to be the same for this game. The Cowboys have a high-powered offense. They have a high-powered defense. And I think they're more of a complete team than the Raiders. That's why I have the Cowboys winning this one. But I think it's definitely going to be close. And it looks like we have a trend for all the Thanksgiving games so far. It looks like all the losing teams from last week are playing against each other this week, because we have the Bills at the Saints. Now the Bills coming off of a crushing loss to, should I just say, Jonathan Taylor. It was the Bills versus Jonathan Taylor at that point. Jonathan Taylor scored 5 touchdowns, and that's 35 of the 41 points for the Colts. So it was not a good look by the Bills at all. That rushing defense did not look good. And the Bills are one of my favorites to make it to the Super Bowl this season, but I think they're definitely going to see the Colts in the playoffs, and if they can't stop Jonathan Taylor, who's been amazing, I don't think the Bills will be able to make it to the Super Bowl, because they're going to be playing better running backs, or not better running backs, but they're going to be facing better rushing attacks in the playoffs, and they just could not stop Jonathan Taylor. I had Jonathan Taylor in one of my leagues. He put up 52. And I played against, or actually no, I didn't play against him. Luckily, I did not play against him. That would have been pretty bad, but, yeah, he just went off that game. I had to actually see his stats for this game. No, I knew he had 5 touchdowns, or he actually had 4 touchdowns, so 28 out of the 41 points. He had 185 rushing yards. That's almost 200 rushing yards, and he had 32 rush attempts. So, he kind of took the ball away from every running back on that list, on the depth chart. But really good game by Jonathan Taylor. The Bills just couldn't stop him. Obviously, that was, the main point of their weakness is just that run attack, and they could not do anything against Jonathan Taylor. The passing game was okay. They only allowed Carson Wentz to throw 20 times. Carson Wentz only threw 20 times. The Bills allowed 11 completions and 1 touchdown, and they weren't able to get any interceptions, no turnovers, and they weren't able to get any sacks, so definitely that hurt them a lot. But it just wasn't looking good for the Bills. That Bills defense just couldn't do much. Looking at the Bills offense, Josh Allen went 21 for 35, 209 yards. 2 touchdowns, and then here we go, the turnovers again, losing the turnover battle, 2 interceptions and 1 sack. At one point, they even had to bring in Mitchell Trubisky. Mitchell Trubisky went 3 for 5, 19 yards, and threw an interception. Matt Breida couldn't do much, with only 51 yards. Dawson Knox had 80 yards, which was far from any of the receivers on this list. Stephon Diggs had 4 receptions for 23. Basically everybody except Dawson Knox got 20 plus yards. And then Matt Breida was 16 receiving yards, and Gilliam was 7 receiving yards. So just was not looking good at all. Overall, just for the team, just that defense was not doing good. And the offense really couldn't get anything going. That's why I think they lost. Now moving on to the Saints. Jalen Hurts had a really good game. I think he's been having a career year. I mean, it's only his second year. I think if the Eagles just get him more weapons, I mean, Devontae Smith was the first piece that they could have gotten, for him. I think if they just get more weapons for Jalen Hurts and just a really good offensive line, this Eagles team could be a really good Eagles team. I mean, Jalen Hurts just was going off in the first quarter. He had 2 rushing touchdowns, and then he had another rushing touchdown. So he had like 3 rushing touchdowns. He was running all over the Saints defense. Matter of fact, let me look at his stats. He went 13 for 24, with 147 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, throwing wise. And he was sacked 3 times, so the Saints were getting in the backfield, but he had 18 carries for 69 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. And this rushing attack was running all over the Saints. Miles Sanders, 94 yards, Jalen Hurts, 69, obviously, from what I just said. Jordan Howard had 63 rushing yards. Dallas Goedert and Devontae Smith combined for 60, or not combined, but they combined by with 120 plus yards. It was really good. Only 9 receptions. They both combined for 9 receptions and more than 120 yards. And then obviously Trevor Siemian, who I think was going to be a really big liability on this offense, went 22 for 40, threw for 214 yards. He did have 3 touchdowns, but along with that, he threw 2 interceptions. So obviously losing this turnover battle. Mark Ingram had a really good game. From previous years, he had 16 rushes for 88 yards. It's been a long time since he had that. Tre'Quan Smith did okay in the receiving game, 64 yards on 5 receptions. Just wasn't looking that good for the team overall. Just they got a lot of yards, a lot of passing yards, but they lost in the turnover battle, and I think that was a main key as to why they lost. And the Eagles were able to take advantage of that and score touchdowns after these interceptions. So, and after these turnovers. So, really big loss for the Saints. But not going into this game, Bills at Saints, I have Buffalo winning this one. I do think it's going to be close. Because, the Bills coming off of a demoralizing win, from the Colts, and then the Saints obviously coming off of a demoralizing loss as well to the Eagles. But I think the Bills just overall have a more complete team. I think Trevor Siemian is continuing to be more of a liability on this offense, which is really hurting the Saints here, but they don't have any other quarterback on their depth chart. He's the last quarterback until Taysom Hill comes in and is ready to be quarterback, but I do think they're going to keep him at that flex spot, so I'm not sure if they're going to go with Trevor Siemian the entire season, but they most likely will, and this is just a liability on the offense, and the Bills coming off of a game that was really bad for them, but I think they're going to come back, show some flashes again, and then, hopefully they kind of get a groove in, but I think this should be a pretty easy Bills win, but I do think it's going to be close. I just have the Bills win this one because they're a more complete team. Now moving on from the Thanksgiving games, moving into Sunday's games, we have the Falcons at the Jaguars. Now the Falcons are coming off of a crushing loss, a blowout a shutout even against the Patriots on Thursday Night Football, losing to the Patriots 25-0. And they made it to the red zone a couple times. I mean, Younghoe Koo missed a field goal, I believe. And then they made it to the red zone, and then then they were turning the ball over. It just wasn't looking that good. Matt Ryan was 19 for 28, 153 yards, 0 touchdowns with 2 interceptions. It was sacked 4 times. They put Josh Rosen in there, 1 for 3 for 5 yards and 1 interception. The rushing game really couldn't do much. Mike Davis only had 1 yard on 3 rushes. Russell Gage couldn't do much. 5 receptions for 49 yards. Kyle Pitts had 3 receptions for 29 yards. Younghoe Koo did miss that field goal attempt in the red zone. Just, they really couldn't do much. And then looking at it defensive wise, just Mac Jones went off, 22 for 26, only 4 incompletions, 207 yards with 1 touchdown, along with 1 interception, which is what I think is basically the extent for the Falcons defense. 1 interception and 3 sacks. Just really couldn't do much. Just overall, I think the Patriots were more of a complete team and they couldn't do much. Now looking at the Jaguars, losing to the 49ers 30-10. Looking at the stats here, Trevor Lawrence 16 for 25, 158 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. The rushing game couldn't really do much. Marvin Jones had 4 receptions with 52 yards. And now looking at their defense, they didn't have any interceptions, but they did sack the quarterback twice. But Deebo Samuel had a great game, 8 receptions, 79 yards. That's rushing. Deebo Samuel had 8 rushes for 79 yards. Brandon Ayuk, in the receiving game, had 7 receptions and 85 yards. And Robbie Gould was able to make 3 field goal attempts and 3 extra point attempts. So, just really bad defensive performance from the Jaguars in this game. Now, going into this game, Falcons at the Jaguars, I'm gonna have Atlanta winning this one. Even though they're coming off of a really bad defeat where they put up 0 against the Patriots, I think this Jaguars team is a team where they can kind of find themselves again. Maybe, hit up Russell Gage a little bit more. Mike Davis gets a little bit more on the rushing attack, but just not a good game by the Falcons on Thursday. But I do think they're going to be coming back on Sunday, winning this one. I do think it's going to be really close because these two teams are really evenly matched. But I have the Falcons winning this one. Now going into the next game on Sunday, we have the Jets at the Texans. Now the Jets coming off of a loss, really close loss against the Dolphins, losing 24-17. Just didn't really look that good. The Jets, Joe Flacco went for 24 for 39 in his return with the Jets for 291 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He was sacked twice. Michael Carter had 9 rushes and 63 yards. Elijah Moore had a really good game. 8 receptions, 141 yards, which I believe he's one of my sleepers for this year on fantasy. So, definitely showing up with that sleeper potential. I think he's a really good wide receiver, for the Jets. Now looking at the defense, they did rack up 1 interception and 0 sacks. So they just weren't able to sack Tua Tagovailoa. And they allowed 273 yards on 27 completions. So that's about like 10 yards per completion. So definitely not a good average, for every time Tua is completing a pass. So, that definitely hurt them a lot. Maybe that's why the Jets lost. I think it's really close. I just think they couldn't get the rushing game down as well as they did, as well as the Dolphins did with Myles Gaskin. And they're able to spread the ball a little bit more, Miami. So, compared to the Jets, who really only went to Elijah Moore, Jameson Crowder did okay, but nothing much. But For this game, going on to this game, or actually no, I didn't go over the Texans actually. So the Texans coming off a upset win over the Titans, winning 22-13. This was really surprising, even though the Titans obviously not fully healthy. Ryan Tannehill was still in the game, just wasn't looking good. Tyrod Taylor went 14 for 24, 107 yards, zero touchdowns, zero interceptions. He was sacked 0 times, so the offensive line really holding up for this game. Ryan Burkhead didn't really do much. Conley didn't really do much. Now looking at this defense, this defense for the Texans really showed up against the Titans. They allowed 35 completions with 323 yards. They allowed 1 touchdown, but they racked up 4 interceptions and 2 sacks. So really good game by the Texans defense, even though they did allow that 323 yards, but they made them throw some interceptions and be able to get to the backfield compared to the Titans defense, which really couldn't get in the backfield. And this defense really helped them a lot. They were able to score on these turnovers. Titans almost had a comeback in the end, but Texans were able to ward them off, winning by just 10, or by 9 actually, by winning only by 9, so really close game. Now moving on to this game, the Jets at the Titans. I have the Jets winning this one. I think it's going to be really close because these two are really evenly matched, but I think Joe Flacco now having more experience with the playbook because he was, this is his first week starting for the Jets this season, so definitely need to get used to the playbook. And I think they could win this game pretty well. I mean, Texans also are in conversation to win this one. I think it's going to be a 50-50 game, but I have the Jets winning this one, but it's definitely going to be close. Now moving on to the next game on Sunday, we have the Titans at the Patriots. Now the Titans coming off of a loss, obviously, what I just talked about, against the Texans, losing 22 to 13. Just obviously what I talked about last game, the offense just really couldn't produce much, especially with that 4 interceptions. It's only 1 touchdown, so not a good look by the Titans offense. They had just dropped Adrian Peterson, but they've added Golden Tate, and as a Lions fan, I really hope that he does well for the Titans offense, because I think he is a really good wide receiver to have if you're, looking at depth, because he's still a little bit fast, and he's able to catch. He's a reliable target. So I think he's going to be a really good piece for this Titans offense. Now looking at the Patriots, obviously coming off of this really, really exceptional game, the shutout against the Falcons. Mac Jones went 22 for 26, 207 yards, 1 touchdown with 1 interception. Ryan Stevenson, a sleeper. I did not know he could do this, but 12 rushes for 69 yards over Damian Harris, who only had 10 rushes and 56 yards. And the receiving game did pretty good. Nick Folk did really well. He had 12 points on my fantasy. Did amazing this game. And the defense was able to pick the ball off 4 times actually. 2 from Matt Ryan, 1 from Josh Rosen, and 1 from Felipe Franks. So they were able to get there, and then they paired that along with 4 sacks. So really good game by the Patriots, and that is for their fourth game win streak. So 4 interceptions, 4 sacks, 4 straight wins. So really, really great lineup for the Patriots. And looking at this game, I think they're going to go for their 5th straight win. I think the Patriots just have a really good game, or really good play style going. I think they've found a groove with Mac Jones. They found a groove with the defense. I think they're finally they're gelling together finally. They're at the top of the AFC East right now, looking for that top spot in the AFC. So I believe if they do beat the Titans, they'll probably be at the top of the AFC and get a first round bye. So I think it's going to be a really good game. for the Patriots. I think they're going to be able to use this defense like they did against the Falcons. I think they're going to be able to, see what the Texans did to the Titans and replicate that. Mac Jones just had a really great season, so I think they're going to come out with a win over the Texans. Now for this next game, we got the Eagles at the Giants. Now the Eagles coming off of a really good win over the Saints. Obviously, I already talked about how well Jalen Hurts did in this game and Miles Sanders, and the rushing attack was just amazing against the Saints. Now looking at the Giants, Daniel Jones went 23 for 38, 167 yards, 1 touchdown, threw for 2 interceptions, and 2 sacks. So obviously not the best game by Daniel Jones. Saquon Barkley also didn't have a great game at all. 6 rushes on only 25 yards. And just did not look good for the Giants rushing game. Kadarius Toney did decent with 40 yards on 7 receptions. Looking at their defense, they only really got 1 interception. Then they sat Tom Brady, and then they got a sack on Blaine Gabbert, basically near the end of the game. So just wasn't a great game by the Giants at all. They just couldn't get anything going offensive-wise and defensive-wise. Mike Evans had a great game, luckily, because I had him on my fantasy team, and I needed him to do well, and he did good. So I was glad at that, but just Giants really couldn't do much. Now, looking at this game, I have the Eagles winning this one. I think it's going to be somewhat close because it is a divisional matchup, and I do think they're going to try a little bit harder for this one, but I think it's going to be a little bit close. Definitely kind of far for the Giants, but I think the Eagles are just going to be able to use that rushing attack. Jalen Hurts, again, has been doing great, so I think they're going to be able to pull through with a win against the Giants. Now this next game, we got the Steelers versus the Bengals, another divisional matchup. So the the Steelers, coming off of a close loss to the Chargers, losing 41-37, and just they looked pretty good through the game, but obviously the loss of Minkah Fitzpatrick, which happened during the game, definitely showed in this one. Especially in that last touchdown with Mike Williams. They just didn't have anybody going over, and Minkah Fitzpatrick wasn't there, and that kind of showed in their defense. I heard the announcer saying, if Minkah Fitzpatrick was there, this play wouldn't have happened because he would have been playing over. It was just a miscommunication by both of the defensive backs, and they just and Mike Williams kind of slid behind the coverage and was able to get that game-winning touchdown. And then just some penalties by the Steelers in that last drive, and then a sack, almost a safety. They were down at the 1, an incomplete pass, and then another incomplete pass, I believe. They got a catch. It's like a shallow route on 4th and 23rd, 4th and 23. So it just wasn't a good game by the Steelers at the end. They showed really, I thought it was going to be a great game. I tuned in near the end because of how close it was, but then the end, the Steelers offense just really didn't seem like they wanted that win as much as the Chargers wanted it. And I think that's why the Chargers won that one. Now going take a look at the Bengals game. Obviously this destroying win over the Raiders. And Joe Mixon, great game. Joe Burrow had a great game. Jamar Chase did pretty good on both the rushing and receiving sides of the ball. So yeah, I think just overall the Bengals had a really great game offensive-wise. The defense did pretty good. So it's gonna be a tough matchup, I think. Definitely gonna be close, but I have Cincinnati winning this one. It's definitely gonna be close because it is another rivalry game, but I think Cincinnati's just becoming one of those teams that is gonna be having really close games, and they're gonna be able to come out with a win here. And now for this next game, we have the Buccaneers at the Colts, and going over the Buccaneers game, obviously really great performance on the offensive side of the ball by Mike Evans and Tom Brady. Defense did really good. just over, really bad Giants team. And then the Colts, really great game, especially by Jonathan Taylor. Really great game by Jonathan Taylor. And it just was overall just a great game by the Colts. Played a really good offensive scheme. I think now they're realizing to give the ball to Jonathan Taylor a lot more, which is good because you're not giving the ball to Carson Wentz, who kind of is a liability on his bad games. Like, he's kind of an inconsistent quarterback. So, you had to catch him on the good games, but luckily you have a running back which you can, fall back on if your quarterback is doing really bad. So, great game by both of these teams. Now going into this matchup, I think it's going to be really close, but I have Tampa Bay winning this one. Just because I think the Colts defense wasn't doing that much. And they just were, they just weren't able to get that passing game, settled. And then if you look at the Buccaneers defensive line, I think they're going to be able to stop Jonathan Taylor, or at least minimize his amount of yards that he's going to get. So, because you can't really stop Jonathan Taylor. So I think they're just going to be able to stop the amount of yards he's going to get. I don't think he's going to get 100 plus yards against the Buccaneers defensive line, but I do think he's going to be hard to stop. Definitely for the Buccaneers, but I have the Buccaneers winning this one. Now looking at this game, we have the Panthers at the Dolphins. Now, Panthers coming off of a loss against Washington, coached by Ron Rivera, who was the previous coach of Cam Newton. And I think, that rumored playbook that Ron Rivera had to play against Cam Newton definitely came in handy, and definitely worked against the Panthers. Even though he had a really great game, I just think the defense of the Panthers just really couldn't do much. Looking at it on the offense, Cam Newton threw no interceptions. He was only sacked once, and he went 21 for 26, only 6 incompletions. But looking at the defensive side of the ball, they didn't force any interceptions. They did get 3 sacks, but Antonio Gibson had 95 yards. Terry McLaurin had 103 receiving yards, so it just wasn't the best, defensive performance by the Panthers. Now looking at it from the Dolphins, beating the Jets 24-17, a really good game by Tua, 273 yards on 27 completions, and 2 touchdowns with 1 interception. Myles Gaskin, has 89 yards, really good. But looking at this game here, the Dolphins do have one missing piece, and that's Myles Gaskin for this game. I do believe he's going to be out, which is definitely going to hurt their offense as much as he did against the Jets. It's looking like they're going to hurt their offense. So I do have Carolina winning this one, but I think it's going to be really close, just because of how well the Dolphins did play. I think Tua now has realized that what he can do when he steps up in the pocket and is able to step up for his team as well. So I think it's going to be a really close game, but I think the Panthers are kind of on a hot streak here with Cam Newton, and I think he can definitely do good if they make some changes to the defense. Now looking at our next game of the week, we have the Chargers at the Broncos. Now, Chargers obviously had a great game against the Steelers, but Justin Herbert, I didn't really go much into detail, but Justin Herbert had a really good game, 382 yards on 30 completions with 3 touchdowns, threw for only 1 interception, and was sacked twice. But he had a really good rushing game, 9 rushes on 90 yards. All right, so that was a great game by him. Austin Eckler, obviously, accompanying him for that rushing attack with 50 yards and 11 rushes. So great game. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams were amazing. Keenan Allen 112 yards on 9 receptions. Mike Williams 97 yards, 5 receptions, with 1 touchdown. So great game, receiving wise and rushing. Justin Herbert, he did it on the ground. I think there's like 470 combined yards. So that was a great game by Justin Herbert. definitely showing that he is one of the next generational talents in the NFL, and deserved that Rookie of the Year award. Now looking at the Broncos, they are coming off of a bye week, and I believe, was it their last game that they played? They played against the Eagles, and they lost that one, so maybe this rest will kind of help them on the defense. I'm hoping. I believe I heard Patrick Surtain got injured early, or at least previously this week, so maybe that could hurt them a little bit. Obviously, Courtland Sutton getting this extension would be good for them. But so far just haven't seen much from the Broncos to say that they're going to win this one. So I'm going with the Chargers. I think it's going to be somewhat close because Chargers looking kind of inconsistent. And then the Broncos obviously inconsistent team as well. So I think it's going to be somewhat close, but I do have the Chargers winning this one. Now taking a look at this game, we have the Vikings at the 49ers. Now, I went against the spread and said Vikings winning. And they won by a game-winning field goal. It was a really great game. The Packers were able to kind of make a comeback near the end, and then the Packers make it a game-winning field goal. This is a new for the Vikings, making game-winning field goals against great teams. This is amazing for the Vikings if you're a Vikings fan, because your kickers can actually make game winners. This is amazing. But the Vikings coming off a really good game by Justin Jefferson. He has back-to-back good games. I think they're definitely realizing to pass to him a lot more. Sorry, I just hit my desk. But they're passing to him a lot more, and that's great to see. I'm kind of a Justin Jefferson fan, so it's great to see him go off in that Vikings offense. And then the 49ers having a pretty good game against the Jaguars. Obviously, Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, really great games. But for this one, I'm going to have to go against the spread again and go Vikings, because Vikings, I think they just have a really great team. The 49ers defense has been kind of lacking recently. And I kind of believe that the Vikings are still going to hit up Justin Jefferson on those deep balls, and he's been doing really great. So I think he's going to win this one. I think he's going to win his matchups. And then I think the Vikings are going to win this one. I think it's going to be close because, both teams have really great wide receivers, but I'm going to go against the spread here and choose the Vikings this week. Now, next game we got the Rams at the Packers, which very well could be the NFC Championship game. The Rams coming off of a bye week, which is much needed to teach Odell the game plan, the playbook. Obviously with the loss of Robert Woods for the season, which was a main loss, and I think why they lost to the 49ers. So I think, getting some time to let Von Miller and Odell learn the playbook and kind of get some rest. Really great bye week for them, I think. And then the Packers obviously coming off of this loss against the Vikings. And it's a really good game, I think. Aaron Rodgers, 23 for 33, 385 yards, 4 touchdowns, and was only sacked twice. I think it was just mainly coming off of that last drive, which I think really, A.J. Dillon really couldn't do much. And then you have Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Devontae Adams combining for 200-plus yards. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, 4 receptions, 123 yards. Devontae Adams, 7 receptions, 115 yards. And they combined for 3 touchdowns as well. So, really good game by the offense. But, Mason Crosby, he missed 1 field goal. And he was able to score on all 4 extra point attempts. So if he did make that field goal, maybe they would have gotten it. But, he did miss that 1 field goal in the game, and I think that's what kind of hurt them. So they just weren't able to do much. Looking at the Packers defense, they only really sacked Kirk Cousins twice. Dalvin Cook ran for 86 yards. Justin Jefferson had 169 yards. Adam Thielen had 82 yards. So really great game by the Vikings, and it was kind of hard for the Packers defense to stop. Now looking at this game, I do have the Rams winning this one. I think it's going to be close, but I think now that they're giving Von Miller and Odell some time to look at the playbook, I think it's definitely going to help them, help them know, who's getting the ball, when, where, and Von Miller, gets some time to, play with that defense, which is much needed. And the Packers, they're coming off of a loss, and maybe they do good. I think it's definitely a toss-up. These two teams are really great. I think it's going to be really close, but I have the Rams winning this one. Now looking at the next game, which is Sunday night game. You have the Browns at the Ravens. Now the Browns coming off of a close win over the Lions, winning 13-10. Obviously before, at the first matchup I said, Nick Chubb had a really great game, rushing wise. That offensive line did really well. Hopefully Baker Mayfield, kind of recovers from this injury, and maybe they do a little bit better against the Ravens. And then the Ravens, I'm not sure if the availability of Lamar Jackson for this game. I have to see, but he is questionable with an illness, and then Marquise Brown is all again questionable with a thigh injury, and then Baker Mayfield is questionable with his shoulder injury. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens. But Nick Chubb, really great running back. Tyler Huntley, he could still get something. I think he's doing pretty well over so far. So maybe he does good again against the Browns. But I do have Baltimore winning this one. I think it's gonna be really close. Maybe Lamar Jackson comes back. Maybe Marquise Brown comes back in a much needed divisional matchup. So maybe they pull out all the stops to try and beat the Browns. But I think Baltimore is still going to win this one, mainly just because that Baker Mayfield injury. I think that's definitely going to hurt them a lot. Now, looking at the last matchup on Monday night, we had the Seahawks at Washington. Now, the Seahawks coming off of a loss by 10 against the Cardinals. Now, the Cardinals, they did not have Kyler Murray or D-Hop, so they're coming off of a crushing loss. It just doesn't make sense. I don't know how the Cardinals are so good with Colt McCoy and no D-Hop. So they weren't able to force any interceptions on Colt McCoy. They did get 2 sacks. James Conner had a decent game with 62 yards on 21 rushes. Zach Ertz had a great game, 88 receiving yards, over 8 receptions. AJ Green, 78 yards, 4 receptions. So really great game, receiving wise for the Cardinals. Now looking at the Seahawks offense, Russell Wilson went 14 for 26 for 270 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. He was sacked 4 times, so this offensive line isn't holding up, and the Seahawks have not been adding on to a much needed offensive line. And I think if they really want to keep Russell Wilson, they want to keep him healthy, they need to get him a better offensive line. And they haven't been doing that over the years. Tyler Lockett had a really great game though, 4 receptions, 115 yards. Definitely the loss of, or absence of DK Metcalf in this game. He only had 31 receptions and 31 yards on 4 receptions, which definitely hurts the team there, because I think if he had more of a role, he maybe could have gotten some points or a little bit more yardage, but just only 1 touchdown from the offense, and that was about it. And then they had the field goals from Myers. So just the Seahawks just haven't been doing much over these past couple weeks. I thought definitely having Russ would help them against the Packers, and it didn't. I thought him being there for the Colts or against the Cardinals would have a bigger impact, because I did still predict the Cardinals to win, but I thought the Seahawks maybe had a bigger impact, but nope. So I'm not sure what's happening with the Seahawks, but for this game, and then for week 10, Washington coming off of a win against the Panthers. Taylor Heineke did really good. I think. So really great game by Washington. Taylor Heineke had 16 for 22, 206 yards, 3 touchdowns. Antonio Gibson, 95. Terry McLaurin, already 103. So really great game by Washington last week. And here I think is going to be my biggest upset of the week. I think maybe even of the season. I don't know, because that Jaguars pick, when I picked the Jaguars to win their first game, it was over the Dolphins, so, not that big of a spread. But actually, no, I'm not even picking against the spread. Washington is actually favored by 1 point, and I'm going for Washington. Many people are going to be looking at this Seahawks easily, but I don't know what's happening with the Seahawks. I really don't. I don't know what's happening on the offense, and if they can't do it, I think the Washington football team, their defense is great. I think they have a really great defensive coordinator. Their defense has just been doing amazing. Obviously, Seahawks now are losing Chris Carson because he's season-ending surgery on his neck. So definitely not going to be that good. And Terry McLaurin had some really great games. Antonio Gibson has had some really great games. Taylor Heineke, coming out of nowhere, basically, from last year and just putting the league by storm. So, taking the league by storm. So, I think, Washington's going to have a really great game this game. It's definitely going to be close. I have it at less than 3 points of a difference. So, it's definitely going to be close, but I have Washington winning this one. And that'll be all for my Week 12 predictions. Leave your predictions down below in the comments, or again, vote on the polls on Instagram at high_scores_podcast if you do want to vote on the games. Everybody have a great Thanksgiving. Thank you for listening or watching all the way through, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.